All right, so let's look at application problems. So the original problem was this one here, where we have a farmer owning a 100-acre farm and plans to plant at most three crops. The seeds for crop A, B, and C cost. And now we're having a different problem. This is the one that's worked in the book, so this is a different one. And they cost $24, $40, and $30 for A, B, C, respectively. And a maximum of $3,200 can be spent on seed. And this one now it's $3,600. Now crops A, B, and C require 1, 2, and 2 days of work per or work days per acre, respectively. And there's going to be a maximum of 160 days, just like this one. And if the farmer can make a profit of $140, $200, and $160 per crop, how many acres of each crop should be planted to maximize our profit? All right, so what we're going to do then is we're going to write our equations out here. So first, let's go ahead and say, well, make sure we get all our things here. So let's let x1 equal crop A acres. Let's let x2 equal crop B acres. And let's let x3 equal crop C acres. Okay. Now, based on the table here with the new numbers, not using the numbers over here, we're going to write out basically our linear programming problem. So let's let max P is equal to what? Well, now we're going to use the profits. We're going to have 140x1 plus 200x2 plus 160x3. So that's our profit objective function subject to, and now we're going to have a couple of lines here. So we're going to have basically the total is a 100-acre farm. So if we take x1 plus x2 plus x3, that has to be less than or equal to 100 acres. Okay, it can be equal to or it can be less than that. It can't be more. Okay. Next, we know that it's going to be $24 for crop A, $40 for crop B, and $30 for crop C. So now we're going to say, okay, well, it's going to be 24x1 plus 40x2 plus 30x3. And that's going to be less than or equal to the total we can spend of $3,600. And our last one is the work days per crop. So we're going to have x1 plus 2x2 plus 2x3, and that's going to be less than or equal to, and we have a total of 160. And then we have x1, x2, and x3 all have to be greater than or equal to 0. All right, so now let's move this over into kind of let's go ahead and go straight into kind of our initial Tableau part. We're going to make the initial equations, and then after that we can make the tableau. So if we go from there, that's going to give us x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus s1 equals 100. Then we'll have a 24x1 plus a 40x2 plus a 30x3 plus an s2, and that's equal to 3,600. And then we have an x1 plus a 2x2 plus a 2x3 plus an s3, and that equals 160. And now we solve this for 0. So we're going to have a minus 140x1 minus 200x2 minus 160x3, and then plus our p, and that's equal to 0. And then we have our stipulations x1, x2, x3, s1, s2, s3 all have to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so now we've set that up, and from this, we can make our initial tableau. We might be able to get it on this page, so let's start here. Actually, let's maybe do it on the next page, and then we'll see how far we can go. So we have, for our tableau, we'll have x1, x2, x3, s1, s2, s3, P, and then we'll have here S1, S2, S3, and then P. And so we'll put our dotted line here. We'll put our straight line here and make that look more like a P. All right, so now we had our initial equation was 1x1, 1x2, 1x3, and S1. So we're going to have a 1, a 1, a 1, a 1, and then 0, 0, 0, and that was going to be a 100. S2, the prices were 24, 40, 30, and then we'll have a 0, 1, 0, 0, and that was 3,600. And then S3, we had a 1, a 2, a 2, a 0, 0, 1, 0, and that was 160. And our profit, that was going to be minus 140, minus 200, minus 160, and then a 0, 0, 0, 1, and that was going to be a 0 here. All right. So that gives us our initial tableau. So now what we can do is we can find which one is the most negative of the indicators down here, and that looks to be this one. Okay, so that means for a quotient, let's see, maybe we could do it here. I don't know how many we can get on a page here. We're going to take 100 and we're going to divide that by 1 because that's in that column, and we get 100. Then we're going to take 3,600 divided by 40, and that's going to give us 90. And then we're going to take 160 divided by, it looks like a 2, so that's going to be 80. Well, 80 is the smallest, so that means it's going to be the second column and third row. So that is going to be our pivot point. All right, so that's our pivot point. So now what we need to do is we need to make that a 1, that is 0, that is 0, and that is 0. So if we're going to make this one a 1, we're going to basically take 1/2 row 3 and make that the new row 3. Now to make this one, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make a -20 row 3 plus row 2, and that's the new row 2. And this one, we're going to have to take a minus 1/2 row 3 plus row 1. That's going to be our new row 1. And here, it looks like if we take a 100 row 3 plus row 4, that's going to be our new row 4. Okay. And so again, this is where, you could do one thing at a time and work your way through it. Or if you feel comfortable, you can do 4 steps at a time. Okay. So for lack of writing all this so many times, I'm going to do 4 at once. All right. So let's go back to purple. And so that means that this is going to enter and this one is going to exit. And so this one means we're going to have x2 at the bottom now. So we're going to have x1, x2, x3, s1, s2, s3, p, and then a line. And here we're going to have s1, s2. Now it's going to be an x2. And then we'll have our dotted line and then our p at the bottom. All right. Now, with that, we have to first do our first step, which is this one, 1/2 of row 3. So that's going to give us a 1/2. Then we'll have a 1, and then we'll have a 0, 0, 1/2, 0, and that looks to be 80. Okay. Now we're going to take -20 times this plus that. So that's going to be -20. So that's going to give us a 4. And -20 plus that, that better give us a 0. And -20 times that's going to give us a -10. And then that's going to give us 0. And then that's going to be just a 1. And that's going to be a -20. And that's going to be a 0. And then that's going to be 2, 4. So it's going to be, it looks like 400. Okay. And now we take 1/2 of row 3 plus the row 1. So half of the -1/2 of that's going to be a -1/2. And plus that, so that's going to give us a +1/2. That gives us a 0, luckily. -1/2 of that's going to give us 1, so that's going to give us a 0. S1 is going to give us just a 1. S2, that's going to be a 0. -1/2 of that is going to give us a -1/2. And that's going to give us a 0. And half of that's 80 and it's negative. Plus that, that's going to give us 20. Okay. All right. So now the last one, 100 times this plus this is going to give us what? -40. And that's going to give us basically 0. That's going to give us what? 100, 200 minus 160. So that's going to be a +40. That's going to be a 0. That's going to be a 0. That's going to be a 100. That's going to be a 1. That's going to be a 16,020, so 16,000. Okay. And now we're done. And so that's after our first pivot here. Now, let's figure out where we pivot next. Well, that's the smallest negative. So here, quotient. So it looks like we're going to take 20 divided by, and it's going to be divided by zero point 0.5. So half times that's going to be, it's going to be 40 because you can multiply by the reciprocal. So that's going to be times 2. Here we're going to have 400 divided by what, 4. So that's going to be 100. And here we're going to have 80 divided by zero point 0.5 or times 2. So that's 160. So that means this one's the smallest this time. And so then our pivot is going to be right there. All right. So now, let's see here. What do we need to do? Let's change colors again. All right. So to get that to be a 1, we're going to have to take 2 row 1, and that's the new row 1. Here we're going to have to take that and take a -8 times that row 1 plus row 2. That's going to be our new row 2. And here, if we take a negative row 1 plus row 3, that's going to be our new row 3. And here it looks like if we take 80 times that, that would give us 40. So if we take 80 row 1 plus row 4, that's going to be our new row 4. All right, so hopefully that will work. And I don't think I'll have room under there, but I'm going to put it over here. So this one is going to enter. This one is going to exit. So now we'll have on top x1, x2, x3, s1, s2, s3, p, and then our line. And here the x1 goes to the top, so it goes x1. Then we'll have s2, then x2, and then p. And I think we'll be able to fit there. So then the next page, we'll have to go to the next one. All right, so 2 times that first row. Well, let's see here. That's going to be 1, 0, 0, 2, 0, -1, 0, 40. Now we'll take 8 times that plus that. That better be a 0. And that's going to be a 0. And that's going to be a -10 still. And that's going to be what? -8. And that's going to be just, where did I get to? Oh, that's a 1. And then half of that's going to be 4. So that's going to, where am I at now? I'm on S3 times 8 is 4 minus, okay, where are we at now? That's just a 1/2. And then let's see. What have I done here? I've lost track of. I'm on S2, so -8 times this row. And if that's -1/2, I better make it so I can read it. So that's going to be a positive. So that's going to be a +4, right? Yeah, 4 minus 20, so that's -16, okay. And then that's going to be a 0. And then that's going to be a -160 plus that, so that's going to be 240. All right. And then minus that plus that, that's going to give us 0. That minus, that's going to be a 1. That's going to be a 1. Minus that plus that's going to be a -1. That is 0. Minus that plus that's going to be a 1. Minus that and that is 0. And minus that plus that's going to be what, 60? All right. So now we have 80 times a half. So that's going to be a 40 minus 40 is 0. And then that one next one's 0. And then that's going to be just a plain old 40. And then we have 80 times 1, so it's 80. Then we have 0. And then we have half of 80 is 4, let's see, -half of 80 is -40 plus that. So it's going to be +60. And then out of that's going to be 1. And that's going to be, where we at? A 1600016. So that's going to be 17600. Okay. All right. Well, looks like all of our indicators are positive. So all positive. So we stop. Okay. And what does that tell us? Well, it tells us our max P is going to be $17,600 is how much we're going to make. And when, how many acres? It looks like 40 acres of A and X2, so 60 acres of B. And then we'll have 0 acres of C are planted. And then what's left over, we have this S2. And, well, actually, it's here, S2. And S2 is 240. So S2 equals 240 means, if I can spell, $240 was not spent. Okay. And so that gives us everything from there. So we only had to do three here, so it's not too bad. But each one of these had a lot of things to do to get to that point. But we ended up with our final answer. And so again, max P profit was 17,600 when 40 acres of A, 60 acres of B, and 0 acres of C were planted. And we had $240 that was not spent. All right, so hopefully that helps you with one of the application problems.